Embarrassing. This offensive line is piss poor and embarrassing. The sabotage is out there. They're talking about it everywhere now. Footage is everywhere of dudes not blocking dudes. They're blocking air. They're blocking air out there. They're not protecting Shedeur Sanders. They're not blocking for Quinshon Judkins. This is a clown show, and we got the footage for proof.
Because who told him to do this? What is that? The Superman whiff? My man. Aside from that, that's a false start in the backfield. He gets set in motion, and that's a false start.
The turn of events in Cleveland right now is absolutely insane. And if you're a Browns fan who's been screaming at your television every single Sunday watching Shedeur Sanders run for his life behind that disaster of an offensive line, then you need to pay very close attention to what I'm about to tell you, because things are finally starting to change. The Cleveland Browns just made a major move that signals Jimmy Haslam and this front office are done playing games and are ready to actually protect their franchise quarterback before it's too late. Even though we're at the absolute tail end of the season with just one game remaining, Jimmy Haslam isn't wasting a single second shifting his focus to the offensive line. And honestly, it's about damn time, because anyone with functioning eyeballs has been screaming about this offensive line situation for months. Everyone keeps obsessing over quarterback play. And yes, the quarterback situation has absolutely played a role in why this season went completely off the rails. But let's be brutally honest about something that needs to be said loud and clear for everyone in the back. It all starts with the offensive line. Period. End of discussion. If Shedeur Sanders isn't given enough time to actually get into that Brady mode everyone keeps talking about, how in the world are we supposed to see what this kid can actually do? I'm just keeping it real with you. Shedeur Sanders has looked like he's running for his actual life every single week. The kid is scrambling, ducking, diving, and trying to avoid getting absolutely destroyed by pass rushers who are living in the backfield because the offensive line has been nothing short of catastrophic. You cannot evaluate a quarterback properly when he's constantly under siege, when he has defenders in his face before his receivers even complete their routes, when he's spending more time running backward than standing in the pocket delivering throws. The breaking news that just dropped is absolutely massive for Cleveland's future plans. The Browns have officially signed a new offensive lineman straight from the Detroit Lions practice squad. And this move comes directly in response to the absolute disaster performance we witnessed from Cam Robinson this past weekend. We'll get into what happened with Cam Robinson in just a minute, but first, let's talk about who the Browns are bringing in to fix this mess. According to the official announcement from the Cleveland Browns, they've signed center Kingsley Eguakun to the active roster directly off the Detroit Lions practice squad. Now, to make room for this move, they had to place Wyatt Teller on injured reserve after he re-aggravated a calf injury during Sunday's game. So this isn't actually a direct replacement for Cam Robinson like some people initially thought, but make no mistake about it, this move is absolutely connected to the offensive line crisis that reached a boiling point this weekend. Let me give you the details on exactly who Kingsley Eguakun is and what he brings to Cleveland. This young man stands 6'3" tall and weighs in at a solid 305 pounds. He's officially in his first NFL season after coming out of the University of Florida as an undrafted free agent in the 2024 draft class. Now, being undrafted doesn't mean he lacks talent. Some of the best offensive linemen in NFL history went undrafted. What it means is he's hungry. He's got something to prove, and he's been grinding on a practice squad waiting for his opportunity to show what he can do. During his time with the Detroit Lions this season, Eguakun appeared in 4 games with 2 starts at the center position while wearing number 65. Now, the fact that Detroit gave him actual game reps and starting opportunities tells you this isn't just some random body they're throwing out there. The Lions coaching staff trusted him enough to put him in meaningful games. And if you've been paying attention to the NFL this season, you know that Detroit has been absolutely dominant on the offensive side of the ball. Their offensive line has been outstanding, and this young man was learning and developing within that system. The Browns are clearly betting on young talent here, and honestly, that's exactly what they should be doing at this point. This entire offensive line needs to be completely rebuilt from the ground up. I'm talking scorched earth, blow it all up, start fresh with young, hungry players who actually want to compete and protect the franchise. The old guard has failed spectacularly, and continuing to run out the same broken pieces week after week is the definition of insanity. Now let's talk about what happened with Wyatt Teller, because his injury and subsequent move to injured reserve is what opened the door for this signing. Wyatt Teller, who's a 3-time Pro Bowl guard and has been one of the few bright spots on this offensive line when healthy, played in 13 games this season at the right guard position. Unfortunately, during Sunday's matchup, he re-aggravated a calf injury that's been plaguing him, and the Browns made the decision to shut him down for the remainder of the season by placing him on injured reserve. Wyatt actually spoke to the media today, and you could see the emotion in his face when discussing the situation. When asked about whether this could potentially be his last game in a Browns uniform, he got noticeably emotional. He said he was feeling all kinds of emotions just being on that field, knowing that this might be it. He tried to stay composed and professional, saying he doesn't want this to be the end, but if it is, then it is, and he's grateful for his time in Cleveland. That's the mark of a true professional right there, someone who's given everything to this organization and this city. But let's get back to the elephant in the room that everyone's talking about. Cam Robinson's performance this past weekend was an absolute disaster of epic proportions. I'm not even going to sugarcoat it because there's no point in pretending otherwise. Cam Robinson looked completely lost out there. He was getting beat off the line, he was missing assignments, he was getting absolutely worked by pass rushers. It was painful to watch, and you could see the frustration building on Shedeur Sanders' face every single time he got pressured or hit because his offensive line couldn't hold up for more than 2 seconds. The fact that the Browns immediately went out and signed a new offensive lineman right after that performance tells you everything you need to know about how the front office viewed what happened. They're not going to sit around and accept that level of play anymore, especially not when they're trying to develop a franchise quarterback. You cannot allow Shedeur Sanders to continue getting abused behind this offensive line. It's not fair to him, it's not fair to the fans, and it's certainly not conducive to building a winning football team. I've been saying this for weeks now, and many others have been equally vocal about the Browns needing to fix this offensive line situation. This cannot wait until next season. This cannot be something they address casually in the offseason. This needs to be treated like a 5-alarm fire emergency situation that it actually is. Your franchise quarterback is getting destroyed back there, and if you don't protect him properly, you're going to ruin his development and potentially his entire career before it even gets started. The offensive line is the foundation of everything you want to do on offense. It doesn't matter how talented your quarterback is, how explosive your receivers are, or how dynamic your running backs might be. If your offensive line cannot protect the quarterback and cannot create running lanes, none of that other talent matters because they'll never get the opportunity to showcase their abilities. This is Football 101, basic fundamental stuff that somehow keeps getting overlooked in Cleveland. Kevin Stefanski was asked questions earlier today about his future in Cleveland, and once again, he completely dodged and avoided giving any real answers. They asked Jerry Jeudy about Kevin Stefanski's future, they asked Shedeur Sanders about Kevin Stefanski's future, and I'm here to tell you that neither one of them wanted to touch that question with a 10-foot pole, which is absolutely the right thing to do from their perspective. Players shouldn't be commenting on coaching job security. That's not their place, and getting drawn into that conversation only creates unnecessary drama and distractions. But let's be real for a second. Everyone knows Kevin Stefanski is coaching for his job right now, and based on how this season has gone, it's not looking particularly good for him. There are reports circulating that the Browns are potentially looking at Mike McDaniel as a possible replacement. And honestly, at this point, almost any coaching change would be an improvement. I said what I said. Kevin Stefanski has had his opportunity, and he hasn't gotten it done. The time for excuses is over. The Browns need a head coach who can actually develop a young quarterback, someone who has experience working with signal callers and turning them into stars. They need an offensive mind who can design creative play calls that get players open and create favorable matchups. They need someone who can properly manage a game and make the right decisions in crucial moments. Whether that's Mike McDaniel or someone else, Kevin Stefanski's time in Cleveland appears to be coming to an end. There's also been talk about Jim Schwartz being considered for the head coaching position, which is an interesting development. ESPN Cleveland's Ashley Bastock granted an interview with Jim Schwartz seemingly out of nowhere, and when she asked him directly if he'd be interested in the Browns' head coaching job, he didn't shut the door. That tells you something right there. Schwartz has been the defensive coordinator, and the defense has actually been pretty solid this season despite all the offensive struggles. Some media members are pushing hard for Jim Schwartz to get serious consideration. The argument goes that if you get the right head coach and the right quarterback in place, it doesn't really matter who's running the front office, because those two positions are so critical that they can overcome organizational dysfunction. And you know what? There's some truth to that statement. Having an elite quarterback and an elite head coach can absolutely mask a lot of problems elsewhere in the organization. But here's my pushback on that argument. The problems in Cleveland go deeper than just the head coach position. There are organizational issues, structural problems in how decisions get made, how the roster gets constructed, and how the team operates on a day-to-day basis. You can bring in the greatest coach in the world, but if the organization above him is dysfunctional and making poor decisions, that coach is going to struggle to succeed. However, I do agree that getting the quarterback and head coach positions right is absolutely critical and should be the #1 priority this offseason. Joe Burrow, the Bengals' star quarterback, was asked about the Browns and about Shedeur Sanders, and he gave some interesting comments. When asked about potentially tying or breaking the record for fewest sacks taken in a season, Burrow said he's not going to go out of his way either direction. He's not going to overcompensate trying to avoid sacks, but he's also not going to deliberately take sacks just to avoid breaking someone's record. He's just going to play football and let the situation dictate what happens. That's the mindset of an elite quarterback right there. Someone who stays focused on winning rather than individual statistics. But the fact that Joe Burrow is even being asked about sack records while Shedeur Sanders is back there getting destroyed every week really highlights the difference between the Bengals' offensive line and the Browns' offensive line. The Bengals have invested heavily in protecting their franchise quarterback. They've made it a priority. They've brought in talent and developed players specifically to keep Joe Burrow upright and healthy. The Browns desperately need to follow that blueprint if they want Shedeur Sanders to reach his full potential. This signing of Kingsley Eguakun is a step in the right direction, but it's only one step. This cannot be the only move the Browns make to address the offensive line. They need to be active in free agency, targeting the best available offensive linemen. They need to use high draft picks on offensive line prospects. They need to overhaul the offensive line coaching staff and bring in someone who can actually develop these players properly. This needs to be an all-hands-on-deck, throw everything at the problem approach, because the current situation is completely unacceptable. I would honestly let Jerry Jeudy walk in free agency and use that money to bring in offensive line help. I know that might sound crazy to some people, but hear me out. What good is having talented receivers if your quarterback doesn't have time to throw them the ball? What's the point of having weapons on the outside if your offensive line can't protect long enough for routes to develop? You have to build from the inside out. You have to establish the foundation first, and then you add the skill position talent around it. The entire offensive line needs to be evaluated and potentially replaced. I'm talking about everyone from left tackle to right tackle, guards, center, the whole unit. Jedrick Wills has been a disappointment. Cam Robinson has been a disaster. Even when Wyatt Teller is healthy, one good player cannot carry an entire offensive line by himself. You need 5 quality starters who can work together as a cohesive unit, who understand their assignments, who can communicate effectively, and who can physically dominate the line of scrimmage. Cleveland does not have that right now, and it's killing any chance of offensive success. The fact that Jimmy Haslam is getting personally involved and making moves even during the final week of the season tells you that ownership understands the urgency of the situation. Haslam has been criticized plenty over the years for his handling of the Browns, and much of that criticism has been deserved. But you cannot fault him for recognizing that the offensive line is a disaster and taking immediate action to start addressing it. This shows he's paying attention and that he's willing to make moves to protect the investment the team has made in Shedeur Sanders. Building a championship-caliber offensive line doesn't happen overnight. It takes time, resources, and a commitment to making it a priority. The best teams in the NFL consistently invest heavily in their offensive lines because they understand that everything else flows from that foundation. Look at teams like the Philadelphia Eagles, the San Francisco 49ers, or the Kansas City Chiefs. They all have elite or near-elite offensive lines that give their quarterbacks time to operate and create running lanes for their backs. That's not a coincidence. That's intentional roster construction and organizational philosophy. The Browns need to adopt that same philosophy immediately. They need to make offensive line reconstruction their #1 priority this offseason. That means being willing to spend money in free agency to bring in proven veteran linemen who can start immediately. That means using early draft picks on offensive line prospects, even if there are flashier skill position players on the board. That means investing in coaching, training, and development resources specifically for the offensive line. This has to become the organizational obsession until the problem is fixed. Bringing in Kingsley Eguakun from Detroit's practice squad shows that the Browns are willing to look everywhere for solutions. Practice squad players don't always work out, but sometimes you find hidden gems who just needed an opportunity to prove themselves. Eguakun has legitimate size at 6'3" and 305 pounds. He played at a major college program in Florida where he faced high-level competition. He earned playing time and starts with Detroit, which is one of the best offensive teams in football. All of those factors suggest he has legitimate potential to contribute. The advantage of signing young, hungry players like Eguakun is that they come in with something to prove and a chip on their shoulder. He went undrafted despite playing at Florida. He had to grind on a practice squad waiting for his chance. Now he's getting called up to an active roster with an opportunity to start and show what he can do. That kind of motivation and hunger can often lead to players overperforming and exceeding expectations. The Browns desperately need some players on the offensive line who will exceed expectations, because right now, most of them are falling far short. As we head into the final game of the season, Browns fans should be encouraged by this move. Even though it's just one small step, it shows that ownership and management are paying attention. It shows they understand the problem. It shows they're willing to take action. Now they need to maintain that same energy and commitment throughout the entire offseason. This cannot be a one-time thing where they sign one practice squad player and call it a day. This needs to be the beginning of a comprehensive, systematic overhaul of the entire offensive line. The future success of Shedeur Sanders and the entire Cleveland Browns franchise depends on getting this right. You cannot waste a talented young quarterback because you failed to surround him with adequate protection. History is littered with promising quarterbacks whose careers were derailed or ruined because they got beat up behind terrible offensive lines. David Carr is the classic example. Andrew Luck retired early partially because of the punishment he took. The Browns cannot allow that to happen to Shedeur Sanders. They have to protect their investment and give him every chance to succeed. So while signing Kingsley Eguakun might seem like a small move in the grand scheme of things, it represents something much larger. It represents a commitment to fixing the problem. It represents a willingness to try new solutions and bring in new blood. It represents the Browns finally acknowledging that what they've been doing hasn't worked and changes need to be made immediately. Browns fans should take some encouragement from that, even as they recognize how much work still needs to be done. The offseason is going to be absolutely critical for this franchise. The decisions made over the next few months will likely determine whether the Browns become legitimate contenders or continue wandering in the wilderness of mediocrity. Fixing the offensive line has to be job number one. Nothing else matters if you cannot protect your quarterback. Get that right, and everything else becomes easier. Fail to address it properly, and it won't matter who your coach is or how talented your skill position players might be. What are your thoughts on the Browns signing Kingsley Eguakun from the Lions practice squad? Do you think this signals the beginning of a major offensive line overhaul? What other moves should Cleveland make to protect Shedeur Sanders? Drop your comments down below right now, because this is going to be the most important offseason in Browns history. Make sure you smash that like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any updates as this situation continues to develop. The Cleveland Browns are finally making moves to fix their offensive line disaster, and we're going to be here covering every single development as it happens. Until next time, shake the haters off and keep believing that better days are coming for Cleveland.